I am Jagdish C Sharma. I was in the Indian Army in Regiment of Artillery in 1971, a captain. And in that capacity, I participated in the operations and before that in training, working together with Mukti Bahini. And throughout, from March 71, I was in Tripura. My unit was asked to come here. The first was, the vivid memories I have is crossing over of the refugees. I remember we were deployed at Kailashar in Tripura, and we didn't have instructions in the early days what is to be done if people crossed over. And then suddenly some people started crossing over. And with the language barrier, we didn't understand Bangla well enough. And we stopped them at the border. And I remember this couple, the most vivid memory I have. A Bengali couple must be in their late 30s. And while we were arguing what to do, the wife of the gentleman just lifted his shirt from the back. And he had been so badly thrashed that good part of his back, there was hardly any skin. We saw that and we said, let him come in and let us arrange some medical attention for him to begin with. And then he was sent off. And that was sort of the first exposure. Before that, one had heard of what happened on 24th night or 25th. And here was a first-hand seeing somebody who'd been so badly tortured. And it left an indelible impression. I mean, I have thought of it over and over again, how we do this kind of thing to each other. And I narrated this to a number of my colleagues, and they were all shocked that. So this was one incident I have very distinct memory of. And then we saw a flood of people coming into Tripura. As you probably know, that Tripura state of India has a very unique distinction, that at the peak of the trouble, it had more refugees than almost double the number of refugees than the population of state itself. Now, as far as I know, this has not happened ever before anywhere in the world, that a state has hosted more refugees than its own population, and substantially more refugees than its own population. Entire Tripura, we saw then every part, refugee camps coming up, government organizing relief effort, and then the horror stories. Every time people crossed, later on during 71, we were at near Sonamura, at a place not far from Komila this side. And there was a judge who crossed over with his daughters. And the kind of, anxiety one saw of a father with two grown-up daughters with him as to what would happen and what they have escaped. He was aware that so many women were raped and things of that kind. And so this was, a unique first-hand experience. And then there were many other first-hand experience as a soldier, what one is expected to encounter difficulties as a soldier when we were moved from one place to the other, and 3 subunits of my regiment at times were more than 100 kilometers apart. And there was in the early days, no arrangement for supply of the fresh, what we call the vegetables and these things. So many a days, I remember a JCO came to me that we have no vegetables and what do we do? So I said, I don't understand, why are you posing this problem? Because as you know, it must be same in Bangladesh side, the jackfruit grows in huge quantity and very big size on the trees. And I said, do you know in our part of country that's a luxury and it's very expensive vegetable and you have it for free in such abundance and you're asking this question. So let's all have jackfruit. And for days together, we would have jackfruit at lunch, jackfruit at dinner, and even ripe jackfruit as fruit. So those sort of, now we look back, feel sort of both nostalgia and that, yes, how we could live off the land, manage it. I being in the artillery, what is called the forward observation officer or observation post officer. So observation post officers, you know, normally they accompany the infantry, the attacking infantry is accompanied by artillery officers who direct their fire, which is at the back. So they then are more in with the forward infantry troops, which was what I was most of the war, and that's the training one gave when my regiment was given the task of training a Mukti Bahini, which was earlier first called Mukti Fauj, then Mukti Bahini, and we had to train the artillery of the Mukti Bahini. My regiment, my colleagues who were primarily responsible for the gun position training, and what we raised was a whole battery of roughly what it would be 100 to 120 people. And because the Mukti Fauj or Mukti Bahini had no artillery component and they were at a great disadvantage. So we gave them some training, and some were ex-Pakistan Army people, some were just educated so that they could pick up quickly. And my job was giving some training to the people who were going to be doing the same role that I was doing of the forward observation officer. And I must say to their credit that they showed remarkable ability to learn, to pick up very fast, because this was like emergency procedures. What takes 5 months or so in the artillery center or in a young officer's course, you train that in a matter of 2 months, 2.5 months. And so considering, I would say that they did very well. The most difficult resistance was put up by the Pakistani forces at Akhora. And our army lost a lot of people. There's a very good book on the battle, the operations by then commanding officer of the 18 Rajput, then Colonel A.K. Verma, later on Major General Ashok Kalyan Verma. I just finished reading it a month ago or so. And he has described it in great detail. And one of my brother officers of my regiment was wounded, mildly wounded, in the Battle of Ganga Sagar, where Albert Ikka earned his highest award, Paramveer Chakra. My colleague also was given a gallantry award for the same operation at Ganga Sagar. So our regiment was very deeply involved in the battle at Ganga Sagar. It baffles me in the sense that Akhora, they fought extremely well. They fought hard. There is no denying that fact. And we lost a lot of people. But after that, they seem to have lost the plot. And because even as a young officer, and now with hindsight experience, one knows more, is ideal country from the point of view of a defensive battle. You have so many natural obstacles for an advancing army that it's very heavily in favor of a defending force. And yet, for them to have not been able to make use of the very good natural obstacles, rivers, in the defense is very baffling. After first line of defense, the next major battle is at Ashuganj. And nothing in between is major battle, which is very, very surprising. And I would say that one of the most important things between the difference between the two armies, apart from the most cardinal point, was that we had the support of the people and we were charged with the spirit that we were fighting for something just, something right. So that, and for an army it is very important that they're convinced of the cause for which you're fighting. If you are half-hearted about it and you think, then you take it as a job. And you're not sort of passionately committed to it. But when you feel this is something, we are really doing something just, something right, we must do, then you go what is called the beyond the call of your duty. A major battle was fought in which I was a participant, was at Kasbah. Opposite Kamla Sagar in Indian side, and the same battle in which late Khalid Musharraf was wounded. And he got a splinter on his forehead and was evacuated in that operation. It was a very tough battle, very, very tough battle. It was expected, launched by Mukti Bahini. The company commander was a former Pakistan Army Bengali officer who did extremely well. I have highest regard for him, for his grit, for his presence of mind. And my orders were slightly vague what to do. Then the Pakistanis started firing artillery on the Indian territory in a very big way. And then it was, of course, a no-holds-barred came from us. I was providing them then the artillery support. And what we expected will be over in an hour lasted almost 4 hours of the battle. And I was occupying a position which was so close and that probably the other side never imagined that the enemy observation officer could be occupying a position so close to them. And that saved the day for us. Battle of Kasbah would remain etched. Otherwise, there is a village not very far from Kasbah. This village's name is Chandrapur. I visited both these places, battle scenes, in 2004 when I came. And at this village, Chandrapur, that was by then the Pakistanis would make their foray into Indian territory quite often. And when we would then, in pursuit of Mukti Bahini, they would enter Indian territory. And then we had to do vice versa. And this was a pond which was attacked early morning, November end. And the company commander who was leading the attack from Indian side, Major Grewal, was my roommate when we were in training. At this distance, as we were going in for objective, he got the full burst of the light machine gun fire. And he collapsed. And I asked him in Punjabi, he's a Sikh officer, what happened? And he said, I've got bullets. And so I told the Jawan accompanying him and me, we took out our morphine bandage, quickly bandage it and evacuate him. And he was evacuated. And finally, and the whole day, once he was evacuated, the company was left without a company commander. Because the company 2IC, who was to come from the right because of very thick fog and zero visibility, he overshot and went beyond the objective. And I was left to take care of this company as an artillery officer for next 2 hours or so. And we were very close to each other, the Pakistanis and us. They didn't have the courage to come out and charge at us, and our people, because of death of the company commander and superior artillery availability of the Pakistanis, were reluctant to also go in. And finally, I said, we need to take a bold risk. That's the only way to break this stalemate. And I called for our fire to be very close, because our positions were very close to each other. Normally, you don't bring your artillery less than 200 yards from yourself. That's the safety limit. So I brought it less than 100 yards from our position. And then they left and we captured the place. And then they kept us whole day under fire. And I've seen dead bodies fly literally in the air several feet from the trench that day. And at night, that when we were asked to come, first thing I asked, what happened to Grewal? They said he bled too much, so he couldn't survive. And here I had lost my roommate, who was a very good friend. He was my roommate. And for that operation, I received my gallantry award. We are really touched by this gesture, coming on the 41st anniversary year of independence, liberation. It's a great gesture, and even those who are no more in this world, their families are overwhelmed by this gesture of the government of Bangladesh. And we are truly touched. It's very emotional. And it's our sincere hope that this leads us to better understanding and work together. I mean, relations between any two countries are ultimately relations between the peoples of those two countries. And if people have good feelings toward each other, other things fall in place. So this would certainly create a lot of goodwill. We are all grateful. We are very touched, a deep sense of gratitude. And we hope that we recreate. I met the veterans of many other also. I mean, I have come in both capacities as a former diplomat and a former soldier. And we should, those who worked together, who fought together in 71, we should meet regularly. Here in India, visit some of the battle scenes. I mean, I would love to take my wife and my children to Kasbah and to Akhora. Some of these places they should know. They should see Ashuganj and Bhairab Bazaar, the bridge where it was blown. So it's a great feeling, and we are grateful.